The time is now 5:30 on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, and this public meeting of the DC State Board of Education will now come to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Director Butler, please call the roll. Representative Barnes,
Present.
Representative Lynn, Representative Mayer,
Present.
Representative Ting, Representative Best, Representative Chang, Representative Goulet,
Here.
Representative Henderson,
Present.
Representative O'Leary, Representative Reed,
Present.
Representative Williams, Vice President Patterson,
Present.
President Thompson. Present. Madam President, you have a quorum. Perfect. A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will now proceed with the business portion of the meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda? I actually have, I think, two. First, I want to move to, well, I have two things on the agenda. First, I want to move to strike SR 24-23, approving fiscal year 2026 need for appropriations and enhancements. We have not yet been able to finalize the numbers. The State Board is going to need to probably convene a special meeting to vote on this resolution so that we can meet the mayor's timeline. Unfortunately, we didn't have the document sooner, so we want to notice this meeting in the very near future. So I'm going to ask, is there a second to that motion? So that would be striking SR 24-23.
Second.
All right, the motion being properly moved and seconded, I'm going to ask for the yeas and the nays. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion is approved. Second, I'm going to move CR 24-7, honoring the late Mary Levy, up in the agenda after Ossie's comments to ensure Dr. Levy's family does not have to stay for the entirety of our meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded, and again, I'm going to ask for the yeas and the nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, perfect. Motion is approved. We now have the minutes from our October working session. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
So moved.
All right, is there a second? Perfect. Thank you. Is the motion being properly moved and seconded, is there any discussion about the minutes? All right, seeing no discussion, the motion is to adopt these minutes. Again, I'm asking for yeas and nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. On behalf of the DC State Board of Education's members, I want to welcome guests and members of the public, including those who are watching live via the District Knowledge Network, to our public meeting. The State Board typically holds its regularly scheduled public meetings on the third Wednesday of every month at the DC Old Council Chambers, 441 4th Street Northwest. Thank you for your flexibility as we chose to meet on Tuesdays this October due to the Jewish holidays. This evening, the State Board looks forward to hearing from 10, I thought we had 11, but 10 public witnesses. We encourage the public to sign up every month to share testimony. As a reminder, we now have hybrid capacity for our public meetings, and public witnesses may give testimony virtually. Sign-up closes 48 hours before the public meeting, and the link can be found at www.sboe.dc.gov. Over the past month, the State Board has held meetings with Chancellor Farabee, Deputy Mayor Kine, and Interim Superintendent Mitchell to share agency updates and discuss areas of collaboration. As part of Attendance Awareness Month, we released our crosswalk on chronic absenteeism and truancy, which outlines the current state of absenteeism in DC and how our city plans to address it through legislation. The State Board has also transmitted our unique legislation, the Universal Public School Nurses for Safer Students Amendment Act of 2024, to Chairman Mendelson and the Council. Finally, we are looking forward to attending the annual conference of the National Association of State Boards of Education next week in Louisville, Kentucky. All right, it's been a busy month. I am now going to turn to not Superintendent Mitchell, who is out of town this week, but am pleased to welcome OSSI's Chief of Staff, Kate Godfredson, to share remarks.
Thank you so much, President Thompson, Vice President Patterson, and members of the DC State Board of Education. I am Kate Godfredson, and I'm the Chief of Staff in the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, or OSSI. And I am pleased to be with you on this wonderful Tuesday evening. Dr. Mitchell does send her warmest regards, and she would love to be here, but did have a pre-existing Tuesday conflict. So I will be sharing remarks on her behalf as I provide some updates on some of our shared priorities. First, allow me to extend my appreciation to the State Board for holding a panel on DC's graduation requirements this evening. As highlighted in OSSI's strategic plan, we believe it is time to reimagine the district's high school graduation requirements. We began this work in 2023 as we conducted a landscape analysis to look at graduation requirements across the country and convened expert stakeholder engagement sessions to identify potential levers for reimagining DC's graduation requirements. As we shared last month, we've been deepening our local public engagement over the summer and this fall, hosting an educator-specific public engagement session and a general public engagement session last month. Through our research and outreach efforts thus far, a few clear themes have emerged for what reimagined state graduation requirements could look like, including a desire for multiple pathways to graduation and post-secondary success, an appetite for greater financial and economic awareness and independence upon graduation, greater flexibility for students to pursue classes that align with their passions and career interests, and more opportunities for students to gain real-world experience and demonstrate competency or mastery through application of their acquired skills. The OSSI team will be listening intently to this evening's discussion to further inform our vision for reimagining graduation requirements in DC, and we look forward to continued engagement with the State Board and the public on this very important topic. We are very pleased that tonight the State Board will be adding a representative to OSSI's district-wide math task force, which will be our 22nd and final member of the task force. OSSI launched the task force last week to address a major challenge in our district, improving math outcomes for our students. The task force is composed of educators, policymakers, and advocates from across the district's educational ecosystem. These individuals have an incredibly important task before them. Less than 23% of students met or exceeded grade level expectations in math last year on DC's CAPE assessments. The task force will critically examine best practices and what we can do differently in our schools so that every student has the skills and confidence they need to succeed. The district-wide task force, led by OSSI's Division of Teaching and Learning, will develop and put forth actionable instructional strategies and policy recommendations to transform the future of math education in DC. We thank the State Board for adding your important voice and perspective to this important work. Before concluding, Dr. Mitchell and I both want to honor Mary Levy for her many years of dedication to DC schools and students. Our draft graduate profile asks students to advocate for themselves and others and take informed action on local and global issues. Ms. Levy's life was a wonderful example of the embodiment of what it means to be an engaged citizen and a role model for our young student representatives. As an attorney, she fought for better funding for DC teachers and schools, and I know that personally, her name became synonymous with the importance of family engagement and voice in school finance. Ms. Levy continued to advocate for DC schools long after she retired, truly exemplifying a lifelong dedication to learning and advocacy. Though her voice will certainly be missed, the legacy of her impact endures. And may her memory be an inspiration to us all. Thank you all for your time and attention this evening. The OSSE team is looking forward to your discussions on the graduation requirements and as well as the appointment of a representative to our task force.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We always appreciate OSSE's continued collaboration on important issues that impact all students in the district. And based on our amended agenda, I'm actually going to move us now to vote on the ceremonial resolution CR 24-7, honoring the late Mary Levy. Kate, you're welcome to stay with us, or you're welcome to depart at this time. All right, cool. No pressure. All right, so for CR 24-7, is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, I'm going to thank Representative O'Leary and Representative Williams for properly moving and seconding the motion. Is there any discussion? Representative Henderson.
Probably many of us learned about Mary's passing from Kathy Riley. And after that, there was an outpouring of testimonies to her work. And what struck me was how common themes emerged of her generosity, her patience, her fierce advocacy. I know a lot of us learned a great deal from her, and so I'm glad that we're able to do this resolution to honor her, and I hope that our work will honor her as well.
All right. Representative O'Leary.
I met Mary before I came on the board, but I didn't realize how awesome her work ethic and her dedication to the city was until I started to listen to her testimony for the last 6 years and read her testimony when I wasn't listening to it. She's irreplaceable. Her depth of knowledge was unbelievable, and I hope that someone picks up the challenge to not replace Mary, but to continue her work, because we will miss her, but she's left a huge imprint on the whole city. And thank you, Mary, for everything.
Vice President Patterson.
I'm fortunate to have been here for quite some time and been able to just basically hear all her testimonies over a course of time and all the iterations of public education, all the iterations of the State Board of Education. When it was a Board of Education, one thing is that is consistent about Ms. Levy's testimonies and her fight and her advocacy is that it wasn't political. It was about equity. It was about doing the right thing by students. It was the right thing by parents and teachers. She always gave you the most honest, the most fair definitions of what the budget was doing and was not doing, and then holding people accountable. I'm currently taking a class in education finance. It doesn't hold a candle to what she did. Now, I'm taking that class at Georgetown, and it does not hold a candle to the testimonies that she has provided over the years. She's going to be sorely missed because of the knowledge that she has, or held, that corporate knowledge that she held just in educating people on the history of budgets and education, public education. So I'm saddened, I was saddened, and this is just the best thing that we can do to honor her. Thank you.
I think I saw Representative Williams first and then Representative Chang.
Yeah, I would briefly just like to add an immense amount of gratitude to Mary's family. In thinking about her work in DC, like, she filled a very real void for our city in pushing for transparency. And when I think about her and her work and her legacy, it makes me think about the true definition of public service, and she will be sorely missed, and I appreciate her work, and I hope we can continue to honor her work through the work that we do, particularly with teacher turnover, but also with transparency in our school system.
I'll add on to the themes that I think I'm hearing around knowledge and advocacy and consistency, to talk about what I think all of us on this dais value, which is also pedagogy, right? And there wasn't anyone that I knew and that was able to explain very complex systems and hundreds of pages of documents in a way that was easy for everyone else to understand. And the way that she scaffolded that explanation, I always found incredibly helpful, and her interpretation, not only to make sense of the trends, the numbers, but also to make sure that she was bringing everyone along with her at the level that they were at. And I think that for me personally, and I know for many of us sitting here, that's been very, very helpful.
Representative Reed and Representative Goulet, in that order.
I distinctly remember, I believe the last time I saw Dr. Levy, it was in Ruth Wattenberg's front room in the corner. And there was a bit of a line because, of course, you see the numbers, but you don't process the numbers fully until you get Dr. Levy's perspective about what those mean, particularly for our schools and the unique circumstances that Ward 8 experiences when it comes to things like budget and policy. So I will distinctly hold that moment in my heart because I believe that was the last time I saw her. But she was doing the work and definitely being a presence that everyone, it seemed like, was wanting to hold time and space with her. So thank you for lending her to us, because I know that probably, time with us is time away from her family, but we are grateful for her presence and allowing us to spend time with her and just learning and gleaning from her. So thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Levy.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I had the pleasure of working with Mary pretty closely for 4 years when I was the budget director for the DC Council, and she just amazed me with her wealth of knowledge and her passion for education advocacy. She explained to me how the Uniform per Student funding formula worked for the first time. I was new to the job, didn't know how that worked, and she explained what was working with it, what wasn't working, and then how it would benefit our kids if we changed certain elements of it. She also really made a big push for trying to modernize our public schools across the city and was a tremendous leader in terms of the school modernization push that occurred during that time, because our buildings were not in the type of shape she felt was acceptable, to really give students across our city an educational environment where they could learn and thrive. And Mary pushed to modernize schools across our city, but with a focus on equity to hit the hardest need schools first, where kids really needed to see that the public cared about them. And she was such an advocate, such a leader in those areas, and she delivered results. Her advocacy got more money to the budget each year for schools when the council supported it. So I was honored to get to know Mary, honored to be able to vote in support of this resolution today, and just grateful for all her service to the District of Columbia. So thank you for joining us.
So it takes a special kind of person to do the work. It takes an even more special kind of person to do the work with no credit because they care. I know that, the budget process in general is something that, it's complicated, right? And so, being willing to take that, break it down, and put it in a way that families can actually understand is something special, and it takes a lot of time. And so you ask the question, why are you doing it? And the answer is because you care. And so I just want to say to the family, we appreciate the work that she's done. I have received so many emails within the past few days just talking about her and honoring her. And so I just want to say we really do appreciate you, and we're here with you during your loss.
Okay. I will add, I thought I knew Mary about 15 years, but then I realized that that was not true. Because I realized that I actually knew Mary as a kid because she was part of Parents United. And I remember her and like Sheila Carson Carr and some of the other people from when I was a student in DCPS. And I remember a lot of the work that they did around school closings, modernizations, like as a child. My school was actually one of the schools, Plummer, that was slated for closure at the time. And that work mattered a lot because I think I was maybe 5 years old. And that was 30-something years ago. And now I've had the pleasure of, like, my nieces are at Plummer. And without folks like Mary, that work doesn't happen. And so I am eternally grateful for the impact we know about and all the impacts that we don't. When I think of Mary, I don't know if I have the words, but there is a poem called The Bridge Builder that I think captures Mary's essence. And it essentially says, like, I'm building this bridge for the kids. And that's what Mary did. And so I am very grateful to her. I'm very grateful for you all because you all let us borrow her and all the time that we spent with her. And I'm happy to vote yes on this resolution when it is my turn because it is the least I can do after she has done so much for all of us. And so I believe that it concludes discussion. And so I am going to call for the vote. The motion is to adopt CR 24-7. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? I didn't think so. The ayes have it, and the motion unanimously carries. I don't know if, I'm hoping, I don't know if you all want it. We always frame the resolutions. I'm talking to the family now. We always frame the resolutions. I do have to sign it. If you all can stick with me till the break, I will make sure I sign it and you leave with me. You will leave with it today. Is that okay? All right, thank you. We are now going to move to our expert panel. We only have 4 people. Our panelists will provide State Board members with a deep dive into some of the issues surrounding graduation requirements that will likely be discussed with OSSE in late 2024 and into 2025. We will hear their perspectives on credit flexibility, diploma pathways, vocational education, and secondary transition for students with disabilities. We are pleased to welcome you all. If you are here in person, I'm going to ask you to start heading toward the table. I know I saw John Alfuth, Senior Director of State Policy at Knowledge Works. I believe he's in the back. Please come to the table. I'm assuming I don't see Erin, so Dr. Erin Bebo must be virtual. She is currently the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at CityWorks DC. Kathleen Jackson, I've been told, is virtual. She is a parent. And Chris Nace, Principal, DC International School. Thank you for joining us at the table. Each of you have up to 5 minutes, and we have 1 round of questions. We will start with Mr. Alfuth. We'll do the in-person first, and then we'll move to virtual testimony.
Am I able to begin? Great. Well, thank you so much, and good evening, President Thompson and members of the Washington, D.C. State Board of Education. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this hearing. My name is John Alfuth, and as the President said, I am the Senior Director of State Policy at Knowledge Works. We're a national nonprofit that works with districts, states, and federal policymakers to reimagine what education can do through personalized, competency-based learning. I'm very excited to be here as a representative of Knowledge Works and also as a D.C. resident and parent. Knowledge Works has a decade of experience advising states on how to structure their policy systems to support school and district level competency-based education. This experience has taught us the importance of broadly establishing policies that give necessary and appropriate district level flexibilities for competency-based innovation while maintaining reasonable guardrails to ensure quality and equity. In the context of graduation requirements, states should consider the following competency-based policy elements: expanding what students must know, grounding achievement in mastery, creating expanded pathways that allow for customization. States and districts have created policies and enacted practices, respectively, that reflect these elements. I will center the remainder of my remarks on these examples. First, visioning documents expand what students must know and articulate the knowledge and durable skills that learners need to be successful to help schools and districts move beyond traditional academic graduation requirements. Many states have decided to craft graduation profiles to achieve this. At least one, Virginia, requires that students demonstrate the foundational skills found in its profile to receive a diploma. States like Utah have gone further and created detailed competencies to guide implementation. Even some states without profiles, like Colorado and Texas, require their students to demonstrate mastery of profile-like durable skills as part of their graduation requirements. At the local level, we've seen districts like Eminence Independent Schools in Jefferson County in Kentucky, which I believe some of you will see next week at the NASB convening, are establishing graduation requirements based around their profiles. And here, students are required to complete a locally designed profile-based offensive learning before they can graduate. Next, policy structures that are grounded in mastery rather than seat time allow students to personalize when and how they meet graduation requirements. Some states have redefined key terms like credit in such a way that they delegate flexibility for how students do this to the local districts. Montana, Washington, and Minnesota are states that allow the awarding of credit based on the traditional Carnegie unit while still creating a mastery-based alternative for awarding credit. Others, like New Hampshire and Rhode Island, have regrounded their definitions of instructional time and credit in mastery rather than seat time. Some states have established formal ways for students to demonstrate mastery of key knowledge and durable skills. New Mexico allows students to use standard-based portfolios and capstone projects to demonstrate competency in core academic domains, and Ohio has a seal capturing proficiency in key professional skills that can be earned in addition to a diploma. By contrast, Colorado delegates responsibility for establishing graduation requirements to its local districts and gives them a menu of state and locally established options for doing so. At the local level, we've seen districts like Bismarck Public Schools in North Dakota that have created programs where students can mix community-based experiences with online competency-based modules to earn core content for credits rather than sitting in a traditional classroom. Next, some states have created state-defined pathways that provide opportunities for competency-based demonstration. States like Kentucky and New Jersey have substantial flexibility in their graduation requirements that provide students with a variety of ways of meeting them, including through competency-aligned pathways. Kentucky specifically allows students to personalize the final 2 years of high school by meeting credit requirements through a range of options, such as dual enrollment and CTE coursework. Other states have created defined alternative pathways to a diploma grounded in competencies. Arizona's Grand Canyon diploma is a mastery-based diploma that can be earned as an alternative to a regular diploma. North Dakota's Mastery Framework policy allows districts to award credits based on the completion of state-established competencies, and the state also has a framework which they call Choice Ready that provides multiple pathways for students and multiple options for meeting them. At the local level, we've seen districts like Kettle Moraines High School of Health Sciences in Wisconsin leverage competency-based structures to empower students to meet locally designed graduation pathways in personal ways. Additionally, there are some policy considerations beyond graduation requirements. Transforming them in isolation can only accomplish so much. States must consider how the entire P20 policy and practice system impacts these requirements. For example, states direct finances to ensure that all students have access to high-quality, flexible learning pathways and supports. State assessment and accountability systems play a pivotal role in either helping or hindering the expansion of competency-based graduation options, and of course, post-secondary and workforce pathway partners have a vital role to play in redesigning pathways and ensure they align to expectations. Finally, in our experience, policy fails to achieve its intention without robust support structures that allow districts to opt into transformation. We've seen states like Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Washington all establish various approaches, including state-level offices, additional resources, and collaboratives to support this work. Approaches can vary, but without this final piece, even the most well-designed policy will fail to achieve its intent. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Good evening, members of the State Board of Education. Thank you for having me. My name is Christopher Nace. I'm the principal of DC International School. Prior to being the principal, I was the program manager of secondary transition, both for DC's Rehabilitation Services Administration and the District of Columbia Public Schools. My professional career has been focused on serving students with disabilities. While at RSA and DCPS, I was charged with ensuring students with disabilities had a pathway to employment. used to say that my job was to improve the quality of life for students with disabilities in their future. I still believe that today. Beyond seeing this from a professional perspective, I'm also an individual with cerebral palsy. This is the part of who I am that I'm most proud of because I get to share my lived experience with others. Being one of a few, if not the only principal with cerebral palsy, sets me apart from others. Having a physical disability means that you can never hide from the perceptions of other people. A lot of people make assumptions about who I am even before speaking a word to me. I share that because that's also the lived experience of many of our students. Assumptions are made about their capabilities, character, and value in a way that limits their future. That this fact is especially true of students who have intellectual disabilities and are part of the 1% of students who qualify for the alternative assessment in DC. Those students are the students who are all but guaranteed to receive the certificate of IP completion. In my over a decade in DC education, nothing confirms assumptions about a student quicker than the certificate of IP completion. It's a ticket to being seen as less than capable and minimizes a student's ability to live a high quality life. I know firsthand that employers are more hesitant to hire a student with a certificate of IP completion because they're afraid the student cannot do the work as advertised. As a result, students get measured by a document and not their competencies. This has to change, candidly. We cannot continue to uphold a document that is defined by regulations that are less than. The city prescribes that only 2 years of English, math, and history and science are required for the certificate of IP completion, leaving the rest to LEAs to define for themselves. While the flexibility to LEAs does afford creativity, it also suggests that those students potentially do not need to meet the same amount of time in core academic subjects as their diploma-bound peers. The standard comes from the top, and the standard has to be rigorous. Otherwise, there's no guarantee that students will get what they need to move through life successfully. I share all that to say, I'm in strong support of alternative diploma options being available to students with disabilities with very clear eligibility requirements. I would direct the board to look at the Applied Studies Diploma in Virginia as a model on how this could be done. This diploma option still affords schools the opportunity to craft curricula around IP goals while also holding students to a higher standard. Candidly, the name matters as well. To an employer, reading that a student has a diploma is markedly different from receiving a certificate. This opens the doors to students being judged on their merits as opposed to their perceived capabilities. One of the most successful elements of the Applied Studies Diploma is the level of communication required. I've seen the confusion on the family's face when they find out that a certificate of IP completion is just that, a certificate. It's ill-defined and harder to track. I love the secondary transition process and feel like it's very important. But as a result, I feel like looking at alternative diploma options for students with disabilities is an absolute necessity as we go through these modified graduation outcomes. Thank you, and I look forward to taking questions.
I think we're going to Dr. Bebo first.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. hello from Rumsey Aquatic Center, where I am waiting for my son to finish up his DC Wave swim practice, so many thanks for the hybrid option. Good evening, President Thompson, Vice President Patterson, State Board members and staff. My name is Erin Bebo. I'm Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at CityWorks DC, a nonprofit focused on achieving two inextricably linked North Star goals. Number one, that youth and young adults in our city are prepared for, hired into, and succeeding in the good jobs we have in our city and region. And number two, that local industries are confidently relying on that local talent to meet their workforce needs. I'm also a proud Ward 6 resident and proud parent of 3 DCPS students. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in regard to OSSE's efforts to redesign DC's high school graduation requirements. If done well, this undertaking has the potential to reshape the high school experience for our youth and young adults, including my own, in a way that truly allows us to meet our commitment to them that they will be prepared for college, careers, and life. Interim Superintendent Mitchell and her colleague, Dr. Jones, and team have worked incredibly hard to learn from other states that have taken on similar efforts, as well as to engage DC stakeholders in their redesign process. We very much appreciated the opportunities we've been given to provide feedback along the way. I'd like to focus my testimony on one key important theme. While much of the conversation today has focused on specific requirements in which to include, add, or remove, it is just as important, if not more important, for this redesign effort to allow for more flexibility in terms of how high school students meet graduation requirements. Doing so will allow our students to more deeply pursue their interests and post-secondary plans, learn in more dynamic and relevant ways, be more prepared for college, career, and frankly, find school more engaging and personalized. Here's how this can look. Indiana, and there's live links in my testimony, Indiana is in the process of redesigning its high school graduation requirements. Based on feedback from industry and post-secondary leaders, the state is proposing to allow high school students multiple pathways to graduation. There will be courses required for all students, and then multiple options for earning remaining credit, which include work-based learning opportunities and capstone experiences, or advanced college level courses, all based on a student's post-secondary plan. This is accomplishable, and we've made a great head start in DC in a number of ways. First, in 2023, OSSE issued guidance that laid out the process that LEAs could take to identify CTE courses that meet multiple graduation requirements. In the guidance, OSSE identified 8 CTE courses that meet multiple graduation requirements. And shortly thereafter, DCPS undertook an effort that resulted in them identifying an additional 13 CTE courses for course equivalency. As of last spring, DCPS alone estimates that 864 students were enrolled in courses meeting multiple graduation requirements last year. I'm excited that OSSE is focusing this year on building LEA capacity to ensure they are aware of and implementing course equivalency with fidelity. An additional step here could be to encourage LEAs to identify even more eligible courses for equivalency, including those outside of CTE. In a similar vein, both Indiana and Ohio are pursuing the creation of new interdisciplinary courses and/or work-based learning opportunities that are proactively designed to meet multiple graduation requirement standards. I spent over 7 years working at DC public schools, and one of my takeaways from classroom observations is how siloed high school students' core academic courses are, and how far they are from mirroring the interdisciplinary nature of the real world. And students feel that. They know what's real and what's not. And when things don't feel real or relevant, they often disengage. Ohio and Indiana are bringing classes to life by making them relevant. I've been so impressed with our city's investments in career asset building opportunities, such as dual enrollment courses at our wonderful local colleges and universities, internships, and apprenticeships. Research consistently shows that students who participate in these career asset building opportunities are more likely to earn more and to feel more fulfilled professionally in the future. We want all students to be able to participate in these opportunities, and yet because of the strictness of how our graduation requirements are designed and implemented, so many students cannot participate because they don't have sufficient time in their schedules to do so. The last time the city undertook an effort to revise our high school graduation requirements, I was DCPS's representative. We spent many, many months tinkering around the edges, considering whether to add this course or remove that one or tweak this requirement a little bit. I encourage you to not make that mistake again in this undertaking by focusing even more on how students can meet their requirements. Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, Ms. Jackson.
My name is Kathleen Jackson, and I'm a mom to 3 young men and we're kind of done with secondary education in DC. Our educational journey was not easy, and I hope no family has to go through what we went through. I adopted my kids from foster care. They were sibling set. They came to me one at a time. I was a single mom with a big heart. When I got a call that another sibling needed a home, I said yes. But they came with baggage, various levels of trauma, intellectual disabilities, degrees of impairment from fetal alcohol syndrome, and they were all on the autism spectrum. And from the day we started school, everything was an uphill battle. We tried public schools, we tried charter schools, and nothing could meet their variety of needs. When my son Tyler was in 4th grade, it was suggested he might do better at a non-public school. He had begun to make progress academically, but the culture of this school fostered kindness, but he was very behind. The older he got, the wider the gap. So our parents suggested I should take a look at the Harbor School in Annapolis. And I reluctantly took him out there for a 3-day trial. At the end of the first day, when I picked him up, I asked him what he thought, and his response was, "I imagine myself happy here." So I dropped objections to him being in the non-public school, and the change was immediate. He came home happy, I watched him transform, and I was confident that Tyler's pathway for education was settled. My kid was thriving for the first time in his life, and I knew we were in the right place. Now, Sam's story is a little bit more complicated. Sam came to me with a lot more needs, the biggest one being language. He started in our public school. They weren't able to teach him. So they put him in a non-public school in Virginia that specialized in ABA and functional academics. Sam had very limited skills and required an intense amount of support, and he was angry. This kid had endured all kinds of abuse, and people were afraid of him. But once he started school in Virginia, everything changed. He learned with language that he could get control of his life, and he changed from an angry
Ms. Jackson, your audio is out. Was that a mute? Did we mute her on accident?
Okay.
You're back.
How far do you want me to go back? Okay, well, after 3 years at the school, it was clear that we had all greatly underestimated him. He needed to be more academically challenged, and it was time to change schools. I liked the Harbor School, so I talked to them about Sam. They agreed to give him a 3-day trial, just like every applicant. By the end of the second day, they were on the phone saying he was a fit, and he was welcome to the Harbor School. For the first time in years, Sam and Tyler were in the best place. To say they thrived and learned was an understatement. They would be there through high school graduation. This school offered support and stability that they needed, and they were both on track to get a diploma. I thought we were settled. I couldn't have been more wrong. At the end of Sam's second year at Harbor, all hell broke loose. Apparently, there had been an ongoing dispute between Harbor and Aussie. The Harbor School didn't have a 2-year world language requirement for graduation. All of these kids had language disabilities, and Maryland didn't require it. In fact, Maryland offered an alternative diploma. So instead of the world language requirement, they were taught the state-mandated core cases. They were also taught financial literacy, life skills. They got instruction in job skill development at their career center. They were taught workplace ethics, and they had to demonstrate competency in technology. Their goal was to prepare them for the transition to adulthood and the world of work, and this is what I wanted. Aussie pulled funding, and the rug was pulled out from 20 students that made that trek from DC to Annapolis every day, and it didn't matter how much we argued and begged. And this was just more trauma and loss for my boys. All their lives, they had no control over everything, and this led up to acting at home. I saw behaviors I hadn't seen in years, and probably everybody heard from me how unhappy I was. I was writing to City Council, to OSSI, the mayor's office, and anybody that I could think of to plead the case to at least let this cohort of students finish. If they didn't want to fund anymore, fine, but put these students' best interests at first and let them finish. They refused. But then Harbor sent me a lifeline. They agreed to let Sam and Tyler continue until they graduate. They couldn't help with transportation, but if I could get the kids back and forth to Annapolis every day, they could stay. So over 5 years, I paid about $50,000 for transportation to keep my kids in school at the only place they'd been successful. As a family, we sacrificed everything. And in the end, we had to settle for certificates of completion because I couldn't afford transportation anymore. Tyler, even though he's a year younger than Sam, had more credits, and with 2 more years of school, he could have earned a regular diploma. Sam had less credits, but he wanted to work toward an alternative diploma, and they were robbed of this because of a world language requirement. This almost broke us, but in the end, the only thing that's broke is me, but I'll recover financially, and we got by, and if I had to do it again, I would. Because even without the help of DC, my guys have grown up to be hardworking, tax-paying, community service-oriented, kind young men, and I'm so damn proud of them.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, members. We have 1 round of questions before the break. As a reminder to members, 3 minutes for questions for each member. And the 3 minutes does include the question and the response. I'm looking to Director Butler to guide us through that round.
Thank you. Representative Barnes.
Hello, thank you all for your testimonies today. To Mr. John, one of my questions would be what policies can be considered to ensure that youth from poverty or low income area can achieve that mastery? Because I heard you say a lot about trying to achieve the mastery and do things like that. So how can you say we can support people like that?
Thank you so much for the question. Without taking up too much of, I know you've 3 minutes limited, I think the first thing I would say as the last part of my testimony is that implementation is key, and making sure that there are resources so that there is equitable implementation across districts that serve students regardless of income level or geographic location. One thing that we see a lot is if resources are not there, that affluent schools and districts tend to be fairly successful implementing competency-based education, but that those practices don't necessarily spread without those strong implementation resources. So some of the states that I highlighted, North Carolina, Kentucky, have offices in place, for example, that provide direct professional development to teachers and supports so that these pieces can actually be implemented with fidelity in all types of schools. I would say the other pieces that I highlighted in there as well, just to elaborate a bit on, is the financial element, ensuring that opportunities like the career and technical education that Ms. Bebo spoke about are accessible to all students, regardless of where they happen to live.
Thank you, sir. And for Dr. Aaron, I heard you mention the key word, how. And I believe that definitely stuck out to me a lot, because it's oftentimes we speak about the issue, but we don't speak about how to actually get there. And so for you to mention that, it definitely was very much relatable and connecting to me. But what I want to ask you is about the balance. I want to ask you, how can we ensure that we balance the additional, things we may add to the curriculum and things like that, but how can we ensure that we're not taking away from the core subjects or the core things we already have established?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'll highlight what Indiana did, and that is that they worked very closely with both college and industry partners in engaging around what is most essential. What is most essential for a graduate of an Indiana public school to have in order to be successful in college and in career? And what surprised the state was that they found that in terms of specific courses, there, both the college and the industry leaders identified sort of a common denominator that was fewer than what they had originally expected. They were then really focused on.
Dr. Bebo?
Oh, sorry, I'm over.
Thank you. Representative Lynn?
No question.
Representative Mayer?
Thank you all so much for your testimony. I'll start with a question for Ms. Jackson. First of all, your story was so moving. I am so sorry that you had to go through that, and I'm so glad that your boys are doing okay, and I appreciate your strength and your resilience. My question about your story is, what made the Harbor schools so different from DC schools? What were the main deficits that made DC schools so unable to support your kids and give them what they needed?
Two things. One was they're not able to meet social emotional stuff. My kids started off mainstream, but they were isolated because they were different. My kids knew about the parties, the sleepovers, the play dates, and were never included. And as soon as I got to Harbor, that social emotional stuff kicked in. Harbor also was very pragmatic with everything. Everything had a purpose for learning, to getting them ready to get out. It was competency-based classrooms, and they thrived. Everybody in that school is on the spectrum. So they were with people that looked like them, that acted like them, and they fit in. And they didn't get that at DC.
Were there any specific approaches that Harbor had to social emotional learning that stood out to you, like from a teaching and administrative standpoint, that DC schools could possibly adopt? Or is it just a different environment and those are the main contributors
I think
to the growth?
It's a combination of different environment, and the classrooms were small.
Mm-hmm.
There were no more than 5 kids in a classroom, and there were always 2 teachers in there. And when there were issues, they got in and they dealt with it immediately and guided the students through whatever problems or conflicts they were having. They didn't let it go unsettled. They dealt with it. And the kids learned problem solving.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Jackson. I have one question for Dr. Bebo. You talked about making curriculum and education more relevant. Do you have any ideas or suggestions about what that could look like for topics that seem especially irrelevant? For example, calculus. I don't see how that can really be connected to everyday life. Do you have any ideas about that?
Sure. I will give you an example from H.D. Woodson High School in Ward 7. The students in their IT Career Academy have a partnership with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and they've designed an app for veterans. They use their computer science class to do the technical design of the app. They use their ELA course to design survey questions, and they use their math course to analyze the results of the data. Everything comes to life, and they're connecting it all together in a real-world example.
That is a great example. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Best.
All right, Chris, it's great to see you. Aaron as well. Everyone, thank you for your testimonies. I'm going to start off with Aaron Bebo. How do you think expanding course equivalency options or alternate pathways will change the way that success is measured for DC students?
I love that question. And I think that the answer is that the way success will be measured will become a lot more reflective of how success is measured in industry, in the world of work, how success is measured in college. As you know, I have 3 kids of my own, and what I want for them is to be successful in life. And any educational experience that they have that mirrors their sort of professional life and applying in an interdisciplinary, interactive, team-focused way is something that I can really get behind, not only as like a professional, but as a parent. Hope that's helpful.
Got it.
Answering that.
So basically saying, like, if you want to change the outcomes, then change the way things are being measured.
Yeah, I mean, but I also think that, like, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but I think some people would be surprised at, like, an interdisciplinary course is probably going to result in students being able to complete an assessment for one of the standalone courses just as well, because the why, as the previous sort of member who made the question, when students understand the why, like, why do I need to do this? Things come alive and they care in a different way. That's not just a student thing, that's an everybody thing. And so I think by bringing the high school experience to life more, through course equivalency, through, awarding credit for work-based learning, opportunities, expanding more dual enrollment options, you're bringing the experiences to life, and the students are still need to learn the same standards and competencies. It's just how they're doing it is in a different way, and I think in just a much more dynamic and exciting way.
Thank you. String theory schools in PA do a really good job of that too. Chris, sorry, I only have a quick couple seconds. What specific elements from the Virginia Applied Studies diploma, other than the name, would you prioritize implementing in the alternate diploma in DC, alternative?
Dedicated transition coursework, so actual coursework that supports students to build work skills. Project Search is a really great model the city has implemented, and Project Search has elements that can be pulled out and taught into classrooms so students can then get on-the-job training through transition coursework.
Thank you. And we meet time.
Representative Chang.
Thank you. Dr. Bebo, appreciate this focus on the how. Would you repeat and get a little tactical with us on some of the how reforms that you would recommend for DC and where we would get started?
Sure, and there are live links in my testimony, which I would encourage you to click on. In Indiana, there are a sort of foundational level of courses, as I was starting to explain, that the colleges and industries had identified as like foundational. Everybody must take these. And then there are multiple pathways that students can take based on their interests, based on their post-secondary plans. And so that can look like students choosing to take a lot of dual enrollment courses or a lot of AP or IB courses. It can look like students pursuing an apprenticeship in their area of interest. It can look like students doing a combination of both. The Indiana State has defined in its regulation credit and course in a way that it does not require the NC Carnegie hour, just like ours does, but they've really given LEAs more guidance on how they can meet it. Number two, in Ohio, they've literally built a mechanism.
Dr. Bebo, may I ask you there, actually,
go ahead.
How much of that work is a reform within OSSI or DCPS, and how much of that is strengthening our relationships with employers, higher ed, and building out infrastructure before we do that?
I mean, I think it's both, and I think OSSI has my opinion is that OSSI has really excellent relationships with the colleges and universities in the district, and it has mechanisms through its industry advisory boards and through the sector partnerships that we have in the city to engage, and I think that they have. But those are just some really important questions to start with the end in mind.
And am I right to understand that part of this is actually making it more, when you say how, making it more lenient on or more flexible for the different ways in which you would be able to achieve the credits? Is that right?
Yes, I think the standards, once the standards are identified, it's just that there are multiple ways to meet those standards that go beyond.
With just 10 seconds left, how do we make sure that still allows us to have enough of hours of the student being in school, in our schools?
I think it's a good question. Can I keep going or no?
Yeah,
No.
I would love to follow up with you after. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
I want to thank everybody for testifying either in person or virtually, so thanks to the witnesses virtually. I thank Ms. Jackson for sharing her story. That was really powerful. Amazing story that you told us, and shows that we do have a lot of work to do in DCPS to serve our students with disabilities still. I'll start with Mr. Alpha. You talked a lot about the standards. You talked about the state-defined pathways, which I thought was really interesting. How do we as a city address the issue of the fact that a lot of our students, are graduating but then struggling mightily in college or in careers? How do you make standards that aren't too prescriptive so kids can graduate, but you ensure that they graduate, and if they do graduate, they're successful? So how do you craft standards that will ensure a graduate can succeed, or at least create a strong likelihood that they will, without, making it so that we'll have a number of students not graduating? So how do you balance those two?
Sure. I know one thing that we've seen at KnowledgeWorks, we have a team that does research on this, and one of the research findings that's come out is that from the field, districts that have implemented competency-based structures have, as one measure, seen more positive outcomes with post-secondary enrollment, post-secondary participation. So I think one common element of more competency-based and personalized systems, which DC is currently undertaking, is developing a profile of a graduate, which develops those higher level knowledge and skills. I know in DC, which is very common in a lot of states, is looking at things like critical thinking, learner agency, social emotional learning, as well as foundational academics. And the importance that we've seen of mixing those academics with the durable skills is crucial to really emphasizing what you're talking about, I think.
Okay. That's great, thank you. And Principal Nash, really appreciate your testimony here and your experience. So I'd ask you, what do you think we can do better? We heard some stories about the challenges DCPS is still undertaking. I've been concerned that we're not doing enough to try to include inclusive education in our schools. What do you think we need to do better to ensure that students with either physical or learning disabilities have the supports they need, at each step of the way to graduate, with a chance to succeed either in career or in college? What do you think we need to do differently?
It's a really good question. So I think about what we do at DCI. DCI has 300 students with IEPs, and we're an IB for all school, and so everybody's going through the IB model. And one thing that I think we do differently is everybody's held to the same standard. And I think sometimes when we modify our standards or create inclusion under the vein of lower standards, that's a problem.
Right. Do you think the issue then is that, I think I'm running out of my time here. So anyway, I'll follow up with you, but thank you for your testimony tonight.
Thank you. Representative Henderson.
Thank you all for your testimony and for joining us. I want to direct this to Mr. Alpha first, but Dr. Bebo, you might also weigh in. Mr. Alpha, you mentioned that a state accountability system could either hinder or help implementation of competency-based measures. Could you elaborate on that?
Certainly. I think without going too much in depth, one of the challenges that we see a lot in our state work are the constraints that states are operating under with the current federal requirements. But what we have seen is that some states are trying to think about how to introduce more creativity and emphasize more flexible and more vibrant learning experiences. So one state we're working in, for example, is Kentucky. They're trying to think about how can we take these examples like Eminence Independence or Jefferson County that I talked about briefly in my remarks, and how can we acknowledge those vibrant learning experiences like defenses of learning, portfolios, the like, within those accountability systems. So I think what you want to strike is the balance between accountability systems that still make sure there's comparability, you can ensure quality education for all students, while at the same time allowing for that differentiation to acknowledge the true full picture of what schools and districts are accomplishing.
Thank you. Dr. Bebo, would you add anything?
No, I think you did a good job answering the question.
Okay, a second question to the two of you. In states where they have offered multiple pathways, are there any trends that you see in the students who are taking up different pathways?
I'll defer to Dr. Bebo since I went first last time.
Yeah, so what I would say is in Indiana, this is a new development, but what I would say is my understanding is that a number of students have really gravitated towards taking advantage of the multiple pathways. I need that. Have really taken advantage of the multiple pathways and the alternative ways to get a high school credit. This really reminded me a lot of at DCPS when we introduced post-secondary planning into our sort of college and career programming. And so many students knew that by the time they were sophomores or juniors, that they wanted to or needed to pursue a career immediately after college or after high school graduation. And having a differentiated approach in the college and career planning to support them in that path that they knew that they wanted to or needed to take really resonated with students who otherwise were disengaging because they felt like there weren't pathways available for them.
Representative O'Leary. Representative O'Leary.
Oh, there we go. Thank you all for your testimony. Ms. Jackson, I know that your struggles weren't unique, and that's very unfortunate. And it's a real negative look at how uncaring the system can be. But thank you very much for your testimony. As someone who taught in a school at Cardozo that had over half of the students almost who had IEPs, at certain kinds of IEPs, and we had an autism classroom and some students who were physically disabled. And I think we took care of them very well, but I know that that wasn't universally true and isn't in the city. Last year, several of us went to the NASB conference that was mentioned earlier, and they were talking about how education in the country is still based on a template that was created in 1850. And it's 2024. And in order for the system to address our students, there needs to be a revolutionary change in what students are taking, what students are learning, and what students can choose to take. When our students leave high school, if they go into the world of work, a lot of the things they've learned in high school are not very helpful in the world of work, unfortunately. When they go to college after their first year, they get to differentiate their curriculum and choose the class they want to take so they can learn about their major. And I think that we need to provide those kinds of choices for our students, especially our high school students, because they shouldn't have to take the required courses they have to take are not necessarily those kinds of courses that will help them become better citizens and people who are positive in the world after they graduate from high school. Mr. Nace, I know your school very well. It's a Ward 4 school, obviously, and I have a couple of students of mine who are your teachers. I don't even know if you know that or not. But I really appreciate what you are doing, because we're talking about each child as an individual. And we should be able to set up curricula that treats each child as an individual. anyone can speak to that with whatever time is left.
Completely agree.
Thank you. Dr. Reed?
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I first have to shout out Representative Chang for introducing the topic of alternative diplomas for students with disabilities. So thank you for getting that conversation started. And in one of our follow-up calls, I distinctly remember there were some significant pros and then some interesting cons related to the alternative diploma pathway. So I am interested in hearing, I highlighted it, which one? Yes. The opportunities, what are the opportunities and challenges related to the potential impact of having a state-defined alternate diploma? So anyone can pick up that.
So I think one of the big challenges is that there needs to be a very clearly defined criteria. A lot of times what happens right now with the certificate of IP completion is students are placed on it that it's not appropriate for them to be placed on. And so as a result, some students are receiving an alternate diploma that should be on or right now a certificate that should be on the diploma pathway. And we have to make sure our classes are actually accessible and not just moving kids wherever is easiest for the school.
So you're hitting on something that I've been pondering, the time. Does it need to be alternative school year? Like, are we looking at the time? Like, what will it take? And it goes into that, I think, the mastery conversation. Because we have this really strict block of time that we have kids who are like, okay, 9 months, and all of a sudden you magically get to go to 11th grade. So let's talk about like the time component as well as like mastery. How should we be thinking about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the big things that's constraining about time is adjusted cohort graduation rate. So the city is bound by 4-year graduation rate and 5-year graduation rate. So every school is looking at that too. It's a federally defined thing. And so as a result, there's a vested interest in getting students through high school in 4 years. The reality is, for students with disabilities, they need way more. And the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act gives until their 21st and the district 22nd birthday. And so they should have that time. But there's conflicting laws there that are difficult to uphold, both of them, honestly.
And for the record, Michigan goes until 25 if you're a student with a disability. So I think we need to think about time in DC. Thank you.
Representative Williams?
Yeah. Thank you all for your testimony tonight. Ms. Bebo, I want to start with you. I think in terms of concrete things, I would love to know kind of course area by course area, what some of the course equivalencies are. Do you know, like, if that data exists, kind of like in terms of career and technical education, how that could correlate with other credits, whether it be health, whether it be, you know, whatever other topics students are learning?
Yes, so there is OSCE guidance. It is linked in my testimony. I'm happy to follow up with another link, and the team at OSCE really did an excellent job with it, where they crosswalked the standards associated with each of the CTE courses that they identified against the other academic high school graduation requirements, and identified areas where I believe it was over 80% of the standards were met in one CTE course. And so now students can earn both CT and that academic core graduation requirements credit simultaneously upon completion. And so there are 8 examples of courses that OSCE identified. There's an additional 13 that DCPS identified and is implementing. I'm happy to send you the full list.
Yeah, I think that would be great just to kind of really be practical about what could cross-reference to give students more options in determining their course load. So thank you. Mr. Alfuth, I have a next question for you. So you had kind of mentioned Ohio having a seal capturing a proficiency in key professional skills, and the thing that I liked most about that was it was earned in addition to a diploma. I'm curious if you have any recommendations around what are the most, well, first, like, what are the most common professional skills that are present with that, and any recommendations for ways that DC could implement that?
Sure, and I wouldn't want to speak out of turn, so I don't know off the top of my head exactly the most common skills, but I will say a lot of the things, when I read over DC's portrait, again, some of those skills I highlighted earlier are pretty typical of a lot of those things, whether it's articulated in a portrait or in a line set of competencies that is operationalizing those. That's typically how states go about that. So we usually recommend between 6 and 7, just because we find that more than that, and it becomes a little bit more challenging to bite that all off for schools and districts.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And Mr. Nace and Ms. Jackson, I have questions for you too, but I'm out of time, so thank you so much for being here and for your testimony. And Ms. Jackson, thank you for your just, heroic advocacy to make sure your kids got the education that they needed and deserved. And I hope we can move forward as a district in making sure that fewer kids have that challenge here in DC moving forward.
Representative Patterson.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming out this evening. Mr. Nays, I really appreciate your passion and your comments, specifically around DCI. I'm kind of curious. You guys are doing this great job and everything. My colleagues have asked some very great questions and everything. My questions to you, because you said name matters. That was one of your biggest things. So one of my simplest questions, I hope, is what would you call this diploma?
To be honest, I actually think Virginia did a good job with their name. The Applied Studies Diploma is super broad, which I think it should be, because it allows for different things to be pulled in to make the diploma. It is not a advanced studies diploma, it's not standard diploma, which is very more defined. This allows for flexibility, and I think that actually is what's necessary to be able to make this work for all students.
Mm-hmm. And my second question, my follow-up question would be, DCI is a charter school, so it has a lot of autonomy in how it implemented its program. If you were to give suggestions to this body as we go forward and everything, what would you suggest as far as how we would implement it once, we got this passed?
It's a great question. So having worked for DCPS too, one of the things that I found very successful is actually having stakeholder conversations, because one of the challenges that I always ran into with implementing things around secondary transition is a lot of teachers, a lot of administrators, a lot of families felt like there was no voice in the process. It was just put upon them, and as a result, I saw a lot of detraction from actually getting the things done. One of the things that was different is the River Terrace Workforce Development Center was really built through the community, and it has been a very successful model, and DCPS has championed that. So I think that's a really good example of how this could work and how things could be implemented in a way that's meaningful.
And I truly appreciate your answer. I knew you had it for me. Thank you.
President Thompson.
I want to start with thanking everyone for their time and their testimonies tonight. Dr. Bebo, I really appreciate you elevating the work Indiana has done. One of the things I appreciate about how they break down their tracks is they not only have multiple tracks, but then they actually have distinctions within tracks, which is really cool. And so looking forward to digging into that a bit more. My sister is a DCI grad, so I will tell her I saw you this evening. And Ms. Jackson, I just really appreciate you being with us this evening. I know that you had some other challenges and you wanted to join us in person, but I really sincerely appreciate you accepting my invitation when we met at Rosedale. One of the things that we talked about when we met was just the difference in sometimes just making a change on paper, and what that can allow and how that makes a difference in just the trajectory of young people's lives. And I think your testimony is all too illustrative of some of the challenges we face and also some of the challenges we can tackle. And so I really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability with us tonight. And I hope it helps other people understand not just like why we should do this, but why this is like really, really important. I am happy to yield the rest of my time unless there are any panelists that want to leave us with like a lingering thought that they didn't get to answer or cut off from. I'm happy to give them my last roughly minute and 15 seconds when I finish the sentence. All right. Hearing none, I'm just going to thank everyone again. That concludes the panel. Yes, that concludes the panel. We now have a recess. It's normally 5 minutes. We might be taking them. So let's just say be back at 7 o'clock. It is 6:51. I'm going to give us 9 minutes. Thank you.
You guys always put really good teams on. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Hi. I really appreciate the chance to hear your story and also the work that you're doing. Dr. Reed and I have been, we had a few constituents in Ward 2 start reaching out about certificates and diplomas, and one of the things that came up was the naming and then sort of like how challenging it was for this particular family and child to move forward. Because it wasn't a diploma, it was a certificate. So I think as we think about what's your ideal, what do you think is the best way to go?
Thank you. Always.
Yes, thank you. I like the shoes.
Oh, thank you.
Move, always.
That was so great.
Get downstairs.
You got a better hand. You got the better hand. I'm gonna come on in after you guys have all the family and everything.
Members, can we assemble at the front right now so we can take this picture and then you can continue your break? Representative Chang to the front, Representative Reed to the front, student members to the front.
I have to squeeze in, y'all. Perfect. Great. Do you want to stand in the first row here? One of you? Perfect. Just for the sake of, that's good. Ready? Perfect. Hello. How's it going?
It is 6:59. We are reconvening in 1 minute. Members, please make your way back to the dais. It is 7:01. This is my last call for members to come back to the dais so we can start our public testimony. I'm gonna start assembling the witnesses now. We hear public testimony from public witnesses at every public meeting, and your comments become part of our official record. If you would like to speak at a future public meeting, which now includes a virtual option, please sign up on our website at sboe.dc.gov or contact our staff by email at sboe@dc.gov or by phone at 202-741-0888. Tonight, we have 10 witnesses who submitted public testimony. We will hear from those in attendance in a panel format. Each witness will have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. If you are with us in person, please note you must use one of the microphones at the table, which are already on. After our public witnesses speak, we will pause for questions from board members. Members will have 3 minutes for questions from public witnesses, and those 3 minutes, this is our friendly reminder, do include the question or comment and the answer. Director Butler will call the public witnesses in groups and announce the question rounds. She will also assist with timing to ensure our witnesses and board members stay within their allotted time. Director Butler, you may ask what public witnesses to come to the table now. Thank you in advance.
William Dickey. Libby Bushell. Do we have Libby online? Okay. Sarah Buckley. Sarah Buckley. Laura Fuchs. Laura Fuchs. Rebecca Morris, Andrea Trujillo, Melanie Douglas, Angie Perko, Zelly Jones, and Numi Rahman. We will go William Dickey, Libby Bushell, Andrea Trujillo, Angie Perko, Zelly Jones, followed by Numi Rahman. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Will Ndika, and I coach first and second grade soccer at Emmett on Bone Elementary School for DC Scores. I'm testing on my own behalf today. I want to first and foremost thank this board for what it did last month in passing a resolution that introduced legislation into the DC Council that will restore a full-time nurse at every DCPS public and charter school. Representative O'Leary, you stated last month that it should not have been up to this board to do this, but that is where we are, and this board acted to take the first step to what all parents, students, staff, and nurses want and know to be the right course. Thank you. I especially want to thank Representative Eric Goulet for doing what politicians don't always do, making good on a promise. Mr. Goulet told me in July that he wanted to get this resolution done in a few months, and you, Mr. Goulet, and the board did so. This was part of the inspiration for us to organize a strategy Zoom call with all of the disparate advocacy groups, nurse, parents, staff, and students on this issue last week. And your guidance on that call, Mr. Goulet, was invaluable. But more than that, Representative Goulet, you and Representative O'Leary went to bat for the SBOE resolution at the DC Council hearing last week, where I also testified. When DC Council Chairperson Christina Henderson mentioned that Mr. Goulet, who was the last of the virtual public witnesses, was not on the Zoom call, I texted him and he replied that he was just coming out of a meeting, but that he would be on in a few minutes. And so finding myself back in my note passing high school days, I found a pen, tore off a piece of paper, and slipped a note to Mrs. Henderson saying, yes, Mr. Goulet would be there. And ultimately, he did get on. I did this because I figured that as the former director of the Health Committee, Representative Goulet's testimony would give the kind of heft to the arguments that my colleagues and the outstanding students, Capri and Brady, at the Health Justice Club, all of whom testified, had hammered home that entire morning to somewhat incredulous council, to say the least, whose members seemed skeptical that the legislation even existed. I hope your wonderful staff, whose finding that only 44 nurses remained at DCPS schools loomed large at the hearing, will consider to further help us in fact-checking DC Health's seemingly false assertion that 98% of school health suites under the School Health Services Program are currently staffed. This figure was undermined by the result of my colleague Libby Buclay's Find Your Nurse Tech Friday survey, in which students and parents reported whether someone is actually staffing their school's health suite. Over 40% of the health suites were not staffed on a particular day. This survey was of particular interest to Mr. Mendelson, who seemed to have gradually lost some of his earlier skepticism and grilled the DC Health government witness over the survey's result, actually extracting a pledge from DC Health to follow up with Ms. Bouquet. The sample size was small, but the takeaway was that the council will listen to actual ground data like this.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, so I hope we can take the survey one step further and contact every one of the 187 DCPS schools and ask them. Thank you all.
Thank you. Libby?
Hi, thank you. My name's Libby Buckley, and I'm one of the co-coordinators of Parents United for School Health. And I've raised 3 kids in Jackson Reed, and my son Wesley Hoy would like to say hello. I just wanted to note that The school, I appreciate all the work the State Board of Education is doing on presenting a bill to bring back the one nurse per school model. I hope the council will agree to consider this bill and that it will find a sponsor. So we've talked ad nauseum about this, but what I want to talk about today is how the State Board of Education can do what you can do to help us right now. While it would be great in a couple years to be able to have nurses, one nurse per school, right now we're stuck with the cluster model until council decides to take action. And there doesn't seem to be really anyone monitoring the performance of the Children's School Services Program. I've sat through multiple hearings in which Councilmember Henderson has asked for specific data and DOH never seems to provide it. Why is this okay? I think part of it is that this program is funded by a grant and not a contract. Grants are usually more flexible and don't require the same monitoring. And I think this creates a situation where we can't mandate the type of accountability that we really need. I feel like DC Council tends to take at face value the Department of Health assertion that they have most of the health suites covered. And as Willem mentioned, we took it upon ourselves to start monitoring the program by doing a series of Find Your Nurse or Techs campaigns where we asked students and parents to check in to see if there was a staff member in their health suite. During that first round, we received 17 responses for 16 schools, including charter and public, Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 5, and Ward 6. And the survey showed that over 30% of health suites were not covered on the day in question. And I just think that it would be really helpful if, I know that principals and teachers are afraid of speaking out on this. They're afraid of having retaliation since they report ultimately to the mayor. I would love to have the State Board of Education help us figure out if there's a way that you could gather these data and help create reporting mechanisms that we could monitor this by maybe asking principals to report on specific days whether they actually have a school nurse in their suite or a nurse tech or an EMT. And I think similarly, we need consistency. And another thing that we're finding is that, if you have a health tech in that suite, but there's a different one each day, they're not creating the needed bonding with the kids. So we really need to have continuity. And so again, having the State Board of Education request this kind of accountability and reporting, maybe by asking who the person is who's in the suite and what kind of data, what the name is of that person and monitoring whether it's the same one month to month. I think that would be really helpful. I am not a fan of CSS's current model, but it is what we have for this school year, and we need to keep the pressure on to ensure that CSS is living up to its public claims. We need your help to connect with these schools, hear the real stories on what's happening on the ground floor without fear of retribution, and expose the flaws in the current model. Thank you.
Andrea?
My name is Andrea Trujillo, and I am a pre-K early learning support teacher. You might be thinking, why does a pre-K teacher care about graduation requirements? It's because I care what opportunities our students are going to have access to. And so for students that struggle with English and math, often, and that is an issue, there's lots of students that struggle with English and math, to get them to achieve more and get higher scores or get more proficient, we put them in additional courses in high school of math or English. And I think that, that with high stakes testing is kind of a deterrent to staying in school for students who struggle when that's all that's focused on. Because if you already don't like it and you have to take more of it, you're not going to want to do it and go. And so I think that giving them an alternative pathway where we still ensure that they're meeting the core curriculum and they're learning English and math that they need to learn, but providing them with vocational programs that they can take instead of other electives. They would be able to take vocational courses so that they would be able to enter the workforce immediately after high school. And I think that would provide incentives for students to stay in school and to do better in those core classes, because you could make it like sports. Like you can make, like, to be in this vocational program, you have to maintain this grade point average. And so I think it would be a great incentive, and it would help those students be ready for the workforce in the future.
Thank you. Angie?
There we go. Can we hear me? So, hi, my name is Ange Perko. My pronouns are they, them. I would appreciate being addressed as Perko, not Mr. or Miss. I am a special education teacher in the history department at Paul Public Charter School, and I am also the AP psychology teacher there. And I'm actually really glad to be back because it almost feels like we're continuing a conversation that we started last month. So, and I guess today I wanted to come in, I wanted to talk about something that's sort of a student who's really caught my attention the last month. I'll call him Jay. He's one of my favorites. I first worked with Jay, not even as a special education teacher or as a co-ed teacher, but during summer school. Jay had failed English 10, and so he was in the summer school program. And when I started working with Jay, it clearly immediately became apparent that he was not working up to his grade level, not due to lack of aptitude, but sheerly due to boredom. And I know this just because like a few days of one-on-one time with him, seriously, and he was writing so good that, and I am not kidding, they had to actually come in and double check and have me vouch that he had written his essay himself and not used AI. He improved that much in that little time. And I know that he didn't because I sat there and I watched him write the thing. Jay's extraordinary. That was summer of 2023. Jay is a senior this year, and I have barely seen him, even with how smart he is, because his interests are not academic. We as a team, as a senior team, we have known what Jay wants to do. Jay wants to be a mechanic. Jay wants to fix cars. And staying in the school system right now, he believes will not serve him. And let's be clear, this is an excellent career goal. Like being a mechanic, I don't know about you guys, but if I tried to change my own oil, it would be 8 hours and I would be crying by the end of it and probably bloody a little bit as well. We need people like Jay. He is worth his weight in gold. The way the school system is currently designed, it is more advantageous for him to drop out and risk not getting the GED, because that is not what he thinks is actually going to secure his future. I've taught him now in English, in math, and history. I've seen how smart he is, and he takes joy in it as well. But he's also reached the point where the joy in it is not enough for him because he is actually, in his own way, by not showing up to school, thinking about his future. Let's see. There has to be a balance. There has to be a way that we can have students like Jay whose aptitudes and career inclinations take them towards more technically skilled jobs, and that is honored by students as much as people pursuing other academic interests. I strongly advocate for a reimagination of schooling as finding different graduation pathways that support all students and their different interests and learning types. We need to incentivize them to stay in school even if they only find joy in the learning. Thank you.
Zelly.
My name is Zelly Jones, and I am a 7th and 8th grade humanities inclusion teacher from Ward 4. I'm also an Empower Ed Fellow. I have 7 years of experience teaching 8th grade, first for the New York City Board of Education, and now here in DC. As an 8th grade teacher, the best and the saddest part of my year is preparing my students, whom I fondly call all my babies, for their high school careers. And I am preparing them to be future world leaders, and it's a bittersweet experience. Some of my students are just not academically prepared for this next step in their education. My 7th and 8th grade students had low gains in growth in DC CAPE and MAP test scores in reading for the 2023 and 2024 school year. And after examining the data, the middle school teacher team concluded that our students need facilitated foundational reading lessons to prepare for their secondary schooling. However, our administration decided to purchase a curriculum focusing more on writing. And as a result, 20% of my weekly teaching time, equivalent to 1 day, will now solely be spent on writing, even though our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students are reading 2 to 3 grades below grade level. Currently, my 7th and 8th grade class have a rigorous daily writing session built into their schedule, with 20% of our time spent on writing 5 days a week. This has resulted in the production of amazing writers who follow the grading policies rubric. However, the question consistently arises, do they truly understand what they are writing about? I'm advocating for graduation requirements that balance content with skill acquisition, like writing. Students should have the skill to bolster their knowledge of the content and context of what they are learning. Instead, it seems that we only focus on the skills and hope it is enough for students to pass their classes and graduate. For example, if we assign an essay on Animal Farm, so long as the students understand the generic rubric we are assigned, they can pass without actually demonstrating knowledge of the text. The State Board of Education and OSSE must consider some backwards planning for graduation requirements that open possibilities for our students at each level of school. Charter schools like mine have no exposure of Algebra 1 and geometry, Algebra 2, world languages, music, or world history. Students can receive a 40% or an F in some subjects and still pass through to the next grade or graduate from middle school to high school. I used to play the piano, and my father, who was a postman for 35 years, with a background in operatic singing from Juilliard, once told me, it's not just the practice that makes it perfect, it's the preparation. Similarly,
I'm sorry.
all right, no, thank you for your time and consideration of my testimony.
Newman?
Good afternoon, esteemed members of the DC Board of Education. My name is Newman, and I'm here on behalf of Intellicy. So we're a leader in the development and deployment of AI-powered safety solutions designed to protect our communities. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today about critical issues that affect every student, educator, family, and city, but most importantly, school safety. The reason that I'm speaking today, it's a common issue that's not addressed enough in our space. I just don't think our schools are safe enough. We have not implemented the right AI solutions to completely safeguard the thousands of students that we have. I personally had to pull my 8-year-old brother out of public school and teach him myself because, quite frankly, I don't know if our schools are doing as much as we can to truly safeguard our society. I urge Brandon Best to highly look into generative AI and what it can do for our schools. There are currently 3 leading companies that are doing exactly what my company is doing. If you choose not to engage in an open dialogue with us, I encourage you highly to look in with any person on the market, because the main thing comes down to this. I just don't think that our schools are implementing these technologies fast enough. Fun fact, so we're actually developed for the Department of Defense, and so far we've implemented our solution to 30 companies, mostly public, some private schools, and what we've noticed is public schools are just being a lot more, they're just going a lot slower in the process, and they're not implementing AI as fast as they should be. What's going to happen is, we're a first world country. This is the best country on this planet. I'm personally an immigrant myself and currently a graduate student at Boston University, Masters of Science in Data Science. The trend that I've noticed across the board is we're just not doing enough to protect the next generation. And what I'd really like to do is just open the dialogue and at least look into it and see, is there any AI that we're missing for our schools, for our children, for the next generation? Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. At this time, we will have one round of member questions. We'll begin with Representative Mayer.
Thank you all so much for your testimony. I want to start with you, Perko. Thank you for coming back. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I agree entirely with what you said about finding joy in learning and incentives for students to stay in school. I'm curious about what you think those could look like, about how students could find that joy, like what administrative or teacher relationships, how those could enhance joy, how curriculum could. Any thoughts you have on that?
I mean, honestly, we get now into my whole dream vision of how I would restructure the whole system from the top down. I think what I find is the kids sometimes have valuable questions about what am I going to use with this? But honestly, I think if there's an acknowledgement of a different standard, I think when it comes to acknowledging what it is that they want to get out of life in particular, there's a responsiveness, I think is what I would say. I think there's not enough done in terms of listening to what it is that the kids are truly like seeing for themselves in the future. I think a lot of them still are programmed into this like must go to college and do job that have been told will make me lots of money, as opposed to genuinely exploring their interests. So what I would advocate for, and I think that interest trickles out, I would advocate for us to continue to explore like vocational opportunities, outside community schools, charity work, different ways that kids can really interact with their communities and find a path outside of academics. Because finding that path in turn reflects back, I think, to actual enjoyment of like, okay, yes, you do still need to know how to analyze this essay. But, you know, at the same time, you can get out of here and, you know, if you want to go to cosmetology school, to your mechanic, to, you know, where you have an apprenticeship, that is all of a sudden like an incentive to like make sure that they can study what they actually want to.
That makes complete sense. I'm curious if you've had any experiences with specific extracurricular opportunities or any programs that you've seen help students.
The Culinary Institute of America, I've had quite a few students actually really line up for that, and there's actually so many good restaurants in the city, and there are chefs that you can reach out to who will absolutely be willing to take on interns and apprenticeships. That is a huge one. I'm interested in exploring, we're trying to build up at my school like a nursing connection as well, and again, mechanics is such a place I feel like is a really, and that technology, the manual exploration I think is definitely someplace that is a deeply like undervalued and underserved like interest area for kids.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rahman, I am a student in high school right now, and as someone who interacts with AI in school every day, I'm curious what your main concerns about it are.
So my main concern is this, right? Currently in our school systems, we have thousands and thousands of camera, but there's nothing really for detection and prevention of the next mass shooting. Our main mission at Intellisy is to make sure that anytime there's a mass shooting or just like any threats even coming into the building, we're able to stop it. I can kind of show you on my phone what that looks like if you allow me to like stand up and kind of show the panel. But the main thing here, we're trying to prevent weapon detection and actually preventing like whether it's like mass shootings, whether it's actually students coming into the building.
Sir.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. The time has expired. Thank you.
My apologies.
Thank you.
Representative Barnes.
Hello. I wish my teacher was here when you talked about AI, most definitely. So yeah. But want to come first, thank each and every one of you for your testimonies, but want to come first to Perko. Nice to see you once again.
Same to you.
And to hear you speak about bringing joy, you know, with learning, and also speaking to your student who is, you know, looking to be a mechanic is definitely very important, that we're not limiting, you know, the youth to do what they want to do. And every time, last time you came, you definitely came with that energy. You came with that, you know, that oomph, you know. And so it's definitely illustrating how much you support your students, which we definitely do need a lot of teachers to exemplify and show that they're behind their students no matter what. And I definitely applaud you for that. And so going to Mr. Rahman? Yes. Okay. So when it comes down to AI, like I said, I wish my teacher was here. But to your point, as far as students using AI, I want to know, how does that specifically look? I understand that AI is used for a variety of different things. However, I'm definitely concerned concerning my education, because AI can definitely take away from that. I hope my principal not listening. AI can definitely take away from that with, you know, cheating and different things like that. I'm trying to watch what I say. And yeah, so how do you feel as if we can try to work around that to ensure that AI is being used appropriately and being used in the benefit that supports students, not harm them?
Yeah, so my main thing was just, ours is like an enterprise solution that goes directly into their IT department, where it'll just safeguard the school. But kind of more on the topic of general AI, and I've noticed that too, by the way, for my like education. I've seen a lot of it is just like you can copy and paste it. Nowadays, there are new solutions coming out to kind of prevent that. There's nothing really to prevent AI coming in. We're either going to adopt or we're going to get left behind. That's really the main thing. And generative AI, some of the things that it's doing, it's actually like scary good. And so if you don't get up to speed with it, we're just going to be left behind. My main thing is public safety, and my concern is this, right? In my generation, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to speak to the whole board here, but in my generation, right, Gen Z, kind of like 1997 and above, I would say, right, our main thing is like, it's a psychological thing, right? Why is it that when you're sitting down in a movie theater or in a public space, one of the things, the lingering things on your mind is, okay, I hope a shooter doesn't come in and completely wreck this whole event, right? And that's a thing that's been like happening after 2005, 2010, really well. It's segmented in our society. So my main thing is we need to use AI to really, really get a grasp and get a good grasp and monitor the 350 million plus Americans that are walking this soil today. Thank you.
Thank you. And with these last 15 seconds, I definitely want to highlight the Ms. Andrea speaking towards the workforce within the school as well. That definitely stuck with me, but thank you.
Representative Chang.
This is a question for, I'm not expecting you to answer. It's just one that I would love to reflect on with the panel, and as we think about graduation requirements is what our federal requirements are, and it kind of ties back to what I was asking around how, right? Because if we could have this kind of an internship or path, right, for this student that you're naming as credits for high school graduation, I think it would be a very interesting way for us to be able to, right, keep this student engaged. What I worry about, and just I think is worth for our team to look into, is if we're even allowed to have that be done, right? And so where the line is to be able to do that. I think my colleagues know that I know the German education system quite well, and the sort of three-tier track that they have, where you get sorted at age 11, 12, creates room to answer some of the things, but the downsides to that is that it becomes a relatively racially segregated three-tier system, and that's something we need to think about as well.
100%. It's the hard thing with like acknowledging the problem is like not always is the solution available, but I think I just like the fact that I hear a lot of respect for the vocational side of things in this room, and that matters a lot. So. I would say with that as well, too, I guess, last time I was here, I talked a little bit about the test requirements and how I felt like if the continual problem that we keep seeing is the fact that this, everybody's failing, we're not meeting these testing requirements. At certain point, what does that say about the tests themselves? I mean, if we keep like holding students to standards and the students keep failing, then maybe it's the standards themselves that we need to really be observing and addressing. Not that there's not absolute what we should require people to be able to know and analyze to operate as independent adults in the world. But at the same time, are those tests actually testing that?
Right, and I think it's a really fair question to ask, and I think it's a similar question that I would ask our team too, which is, what is a federal requirement for us, and where is the actual room for DC to be creative and innovative and be more customized for our students, and where are we just, or where we don't get federal money, right? Right. So.
I guess I'm always interested in exploring those boundaries, pushing them as far as we can go, and then seeing if we can edge those goalposts a little bit further. So slow and steady.
Representative Goulet.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate Mr. Dickey's, your play-by-play of that was very exciting. It was, I think, a really important hearing. Thank you for your testimony and for all the members of the public that came out and spoke very eloquently in support of making sure we have a registered nurse in every one of our public schools here in DC. The good news is, I think it was Ms. Bushel mentioned about the need to try to get a sponsor for the bill. Well, the good thing is the bill now has been formally introduced. It's Bill 25-998. So that's up on the council's website now, and it's been referred to the Committee on Health, sequentially then to the Committee on Education. So we're really excited. This is our second bill that we've done as an institution, and many more to come. I'm very excited about the fact that we're kind of using our full authority to be able to introduce legislation as an independent agency through the chairman. So the chairman will introduce it for us. at the request of the State Board of Education. Now, the next step that we're trying to work on is how do we get this funded? Because the key is we've kind of shown the path to how we solve the problem, but we need a vehicle to get us there, and that vehicle is the budget. So we need to make sure we get roughly about $7.5 million a year if the number that Children's put on the table at the hearing in January is accurate. They said we need $30 million in total to get us to full-time school nurse funding. And that means, you know, over the next 4 years, we'd have to add 7.5, if my math is correct, each year to get us to that number. And I think we have to do that because when they talked about the school suites being staffed, the vast majority are now staffed through health technicians. I mean, that was clear from their data. And I really think DC Health made it apparent to everyone who's been tracking this issue that they've been wrong about this. Councilmember Grasso, Councilmember Gray, passed this legislation. They told DC Health, parents, they're adamant that they want a full-time nurse. They do not want these technicians in the schools. There's nothing personally wrong with them, but they just can't deliver the services that are needed for our students. And DC Health insisted on this model and then insisted the cluster model would work. And I think unequivocally, when you look at the precipitous decline from 82 to 44 registered nurses this year, the system now is chasing our nurses out of the system. And we need to do something dramatic because if we see another decline like that we saw last year, we'll be down to 20 a year from now. And that is really, really alarming because pretty soon, if this keeps up, we won't even have enough registered nurses to monitor the technicians and the LPNs. LPNs were not designed for a school setting. They're designed for a hospital, a long-term care setting where they can be monitored directly by RNs. They're not designed really to be independent school nurses in this regard. So we got to take emergency action, treat this like the crisis it is, and we'll be reaching out to ANCs, hopefully getting their support for this and then making a push in the budget for it. But I want to thank you for your continued advocacy on this, and we'll keep up the push on it all the way through budget.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you all for your testimony. Ms. Jones, you don't need to name the school, but did you say you worked at a middle school?
I work at a middle school now,
And
here in DC.
And they do not offer Algebra 1?
Not Algebra 1, not Algebra 2. Nothing that mirrors any of the high school requirements that we can prepare our kids for.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any other questions, but I'll just say thank you for your testimony. Thank you for pushing. I think that we're moving towards graduation requirements that will offer more pathways. And so we'll just keep in mind your testimony as we move towards a concrete proposal, and hopefully you'll see that reflected there. Thank you.
That'll be amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Representative O'Leary.
Thank you all for your testimony. I want to thank the people who testified about the hearing last week. As Representative Goulet said, this is a first step, but it's a giant step, and it's something that is definitely needed in every single one of our schools. So next year is an election year, or the year after that year is another election year. But we need to get this stuff done now. So we can't stop advocating for this particular problem. I'd like to ask Ms. Jones and Ms. Perko, how effective are the CAPE scores? And how do they represent the students in your classroom?
They don't.
They don't.
I was afraid you were going to say that because I agree with that completely. Is there a writing component? Is there a writing component to the CAPE test?
Oh God, I hope I don't show my ignorance on the spot. Am I right? I don't believe so. Am I wrong?
I don't believe so either. I believe MAP allows you a short answer portion of one question, but there's no writing components on DC CAPE.
One thing that everyone needs to know is that our students shouldn't be judged by some standardized test, A, but that takes the whole system changing, which needs to be B. I don't understand, never have I'm an English teacher. All I taught was reading and writing. And I know that at the end of the year, my students were better readers and writers than they were at the beginning of the year, because that's what we did. And it carries over into everything else that they did in all of their other classrooms. But we need to change these graduation requirements that we have now, as I mentioned earlier, are completely outdated and do not represent each one of our children. So that's what we need to really work on. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what we're going to be working on with OSSE to get the graduation requirements reflective of the 21st century. I'll leave out the 20th century, just the 21st century. And the only thing I would like to mention to Mr. Rahman is the argument we're going to get about AI is we don't have the money. That's the only argument we'll get. And guess what? We have the money. They're just not using it correctly. Thank you all.
Representative Reed.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Dickey and Perko, for coming back. Appreciate seeing you all. I have two questions that I think I can get through. The first one is for Mr. Rahman, and that is, although this board doesn't procure any services, I have never heard of AI in the light of like security needs. So I am curious as to like, you know, if you had like 3 big bullet points related to like things we should be considering related to systems for safety that could have an AI component. And I'm gonna try to, if you can do that so I can get my other question, that'll be helpful.
Yeah, so all this is, it's super simple. It's just implementing a AI software, right? It's a software on your current existing security camera, and what this system allows you to do is just do advanced detection, right? It gives you a little bit more descriptive on who's coming into the building, what they're coming in with, what the scope looks like, and anytime there's even a hint of a threat that's about to come, the school gets notified, authorities get notified. The whole point of this is just to prevent threats before they even happen. Because if you look at the statistics of the past school shootings, the big key thing was there wasn't enough time in between the shooter entering the building and him actually being stopped. We know we can't, realistically stop somebody if they are going to do this. The main thing is how do we minimize the damage as much as possible using our advanced technologies already open to us.
Okay. Thank you for that information. For Perko and Ms. Jones, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on an individualized plan for students that will complement our profile and updated graduate requirement works?
Hugely enthusiastically support. 100%. I mean, that's, as a special education teacher, one of the things we talk about, like when it comes to IEPs, one of the most important things I was taught is like all education is individualized. And I know that sometimes we just don't have the resources to give everyone the one-on-one support that we would desire, but I think that that is a fantastic goal to have. So.
And Jones?
And for my middle school, I totally agree as well. I mean, we go through the modifications and the differentiations of our lessons, knowing that all of our students follow a UDL model and it's flexible for all of our learners. However, if that model could happen, that would be amazing.
Cool. I'm worried about the administrative burden, but I think there might be value to having some formalized plan to supplement this work. So thank y'all for your thoughts. I'll yield unless anyone has. No. Okay, I'll yield. Thank y'all.
Representative Williams.
Yes, thank you all for your testimony. To Ms. Bukele's point around the things that our board is doing with regards to advancing the nursing situation, ensuring there's equitable access to nursing, which I know that you had talked about as well. I think this is one area where the recent conversations that we've been having around state board authority can also help to compel data and to get data to be able to easily push for answers around what staffing capacity looks like in certain places. And so that's something that I hope we can continue building with and growing with as a board to support initiatives like this.
The hard data matters. Right. But that was the takeaway from the hearing.
Exactly.
That's
Feel free to
the hard
comment.
data matters, right? The survey, which was a small sample,
Mhm.
Mr. Mendelson took that data and used it to grill the DC Health government witness. And so I think the more that kind of hard data we can bring.
And being able to get it in timely ways, being able to make sure that it's useful, all of that I think could be supported with greater state board authority and what we can do to help in that regard. And then Ms. Trujillo, I wanted to just give you a moment. I really appreciated your role, as a teacher of our younger students. If there's one thing that you would want us to prioritize when we think about the graduation requirements moving forward, what kind of comes to mind, and what would your message be?
I would think I would prioritize those students that are like in that middle ground. They're not like in that middle. They've already decided that they don't want to go to, or they're not going to go to college. And so I think making a way for them to be career ready, like, have some kind of certificate so that they can go into the field and make money.
Representative Best.
All right, so I'm gonna come to you. So I guess I just hate the fact that we're actually living in a society where we have to look at these kind of options or solutions. Last year, a parent came up to me and they mentioned Zero Eyes. Yeah. And I have a friend who actually works at ShotPoint. Yeah. And so I wonder, like, what are the differences between what you have, but also, what's the technical process? How does it work? How do you protect us against false positives? And what do you do with the data? So, for example, schools have to ensure that systems comply with FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So, like, what happens with, like, because I know with AI, it collects a lot of data. Sometimes it collects data that we don't even know it's collecting. And so, like, I want to know what, I can stop there so you can answer those. And if you finish, I have a couple more questions.
Yeah, of course. So Zero Eyes, they're actually our main competitor. So there's 3 companies in the space that are doing what we're doing. The reason I came here today is I just want to open the dialogue for you guys to look at any one of them. It doesn't have to be ours. The main thing behind this, and we're all FERPA compliant, all of this data gets stored, and you kind of, as a school, kind of choose what you want to do with it. So there's different ways that you can go about it. The main thing here, the technicalities behind this, it's super simple. So you guys have existing cameras right here, right? And what we would do is you implement the AI onto your existing system, and it just gives you basically alerts and everything that would come on. And let me just kind of show you, because it's a little bit better if I show you rather than explain it. You would have, may I stand up and just kind of show him this?
No, sir.
Or not allowed to? Okay, so the main thing here
I can
is,
do it after.
if
You can email it though.
okay, I'll
Yeah.
email this over to you, but the main thing here, it's like anytime there's even a risk of any weapons coming into the school or anything of that sort, what would happen is you would get an automated alert that goes into your IT system, and your main administrators, the ones that are kind of like seeing, because they're sitting down, they're not able to monitor 1,000, 2,000 cameras in a smart way. This AI allows you to essentially focus on the risks that are coming into the school and minimize the amount of time where the school doesn't know that there's an actual risk going on. This is a universal system that connects everybody and everything into one uniform platform. So in summation, there's 3 main competitors. I highly urge you, if it's not our company, to just look at one of them, because our main concern is school and public safety.
So how does it determine risk?
So the AI solution, it's kind of smart. It's trained through generative data. So it's very complex for me to kind of explain, just because it's like not super simple. But the way it generates this, there's actual models built into it based off of what a weapon looks like, what a threat looks like. So there's all these models built in. And to go back to your question about the false positives, we are getting better day by day to make sure that there's not any false positives. But if there are, the system would kind of tell you that it was a false positive. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Patterson.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman, I'm going to stay with you because I want to make sure that I understand exactly what you're asking us for and what we can actually do as a state board. That's an advisory board, okay? So when you say you would like us to look into it, is that to make a suggestion for someone to contract with one of these groups? What is it actually that you're looking for us to do once we examine the type of programming, the different ones and stuff like that, their capabilities? What is it that you're actually asking us to do as a state board?
My ask is this: we should implement these AI solutions as soon as possible into every single school in DC. And the main reason for that is the longer that we go without this specific system, our schools are just quite frankly not as safe, right? These are advanced programs that, like, we developed it for the Department of Defense. We're actually a spinoff of the University of Iowa. And there's two main competitors. Mr. Best mentioned the other one, which is Zero Eyes. Our main ask is this: go with either system, right? Just implement it into the school system as soon as possible, because there's thousands of students right now that we're just relying on our old security systems, and it's only a matter of time before something serious happens. Our main thing is this: we're a very mission-driven company. We wake up every single day, go to sleep every single night with one mission: to protect school safety, to protect the public, because these systems, right, if you look at just on a world scales, China, Singapore, all these countries are absolutely lapping us when it comes to these advanced systems, and it's because we're not taking the action necessary.
I'm going to interject just for a second, because I want to make it clear, like, the State Board of Education, as it's currently constructed, we don't contract or anything like that.
Yeah,
we don't
of
make
course, of course.
suggestions or anything like that. That is more so one of the other government agencies that actually do that. What we basically would do is, make recommendations, those type of things like that. But it would have to be them. And then also, just so that you understand, as far as the expectations, you have a whole separate part of public education, which are the charter schools, which are their own LEAs, which we have no purview whatsoever in telling them how they, do their operations, what they employ, and those type of matters. And I state that here because I just want to make sure for the public and everyone else, when someone comes to us and asks us to look at something and we're trying to resolve a problem that we're very interested in, of what we can do and what we cannot do, I would hate for someone to say, okay, we had this great presentation, this gentleman suggested something that would keep my baby safe and everything like that, and you guys did nothing about it to look into it. So I was just trying to make sure that everyone kind of understood what we can and what we cannot do, so that you'll know, after all this testimony is done this evening and stuff like that, how we can follow up with you, okay? So I appreciate your presentation and everything.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
President Thompson.
I have a couple questions for Mr. Rahman. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
So we have an equity framework at the State Board, and the first point is that we identify priority issues that disproportionately hurt and hinder the educational experience of vulnerable students. In DC, 56.9% of our students are Black, 20.9% of our students are Hispanic or Latino, 17% are white, 1.9 are Asian, and decreasing from there. I am wondering, just given a lot of the biases our society has when we think about instituting things like AI in our security systems, how we protect those populations I named from bias. If two Black students at one of my schools get into a fight, are the police automatically called? Like, how are we thinking about balancing proactive safety, security with equity? And what we know are just biases that already exist in our larger society.
Thank you for asking that question. That actually is a question that resonates deeply with me as somebody that comes from, a disadvantaged background and growing up in this country. You always kind of feel like, hey, is there a bias towards me in any way? With this specific program, there's actually no bias that can be had, because the action that, in order for us to perform the next part of the action, right, in the alert, it actually goes internally in your school system. So somebody internally would have to decide if this is a threat worth having authorities come over to. And more so, on the previous question of how do we prevent the exact bias from even happening, our AI system, it's designed in a way where it doesn't really truly see race. The main thing that it's looking out for is weapons, any risk, any fights, any slip falls, things that could just harm students in general. But in terms of making sure that there is equity in this, the decision comes down to the exact school administrators for actually taking action.
So it sounds like it comes down to the people, the administrator. So you're saying it's not an added layer of bias based on the AI, but it might alert, and then we will have to work with people to hope.
Yeah, and the alert system, it'll tell you exactly what the alert is, what it picked up on, and you would be able to tell within the first 2 seconds of looking at the alert, okay, is this a credible alert? And if so, it allows you to, take the next action. But there should not be, in this specific instance, there should not be any even chance for any, bias or anything of that sort. We try to make sure that our AI is focused solely on weapon detection and kind of making sure the other dynamics are figured out before this. But to just answer your question again, it'll all come down to a per school basis and who's actually making that call.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we always have work to do with people around bias, and so I'll acknowledge that. I believe I'm last, and my time is up.
Yes.
I want to thank everyone for their testimonies this evening. Thank you all for joining us. You are welcome to leave the table. That's everybody, right?
Those are all of our public witnesses for this evening.
All right, one and done. It's the first in a very long time. I again want to thank all our public witnesses for their comments tonight. We do sincerely appreciate it, feel encouraged to follow up with members if you would like. We actually still have a couple of items for vote, beginning with our 2025 State Board meeting calendar. The board does its best to ensure that the public is aware of upcoming meetings as early as possible. We provide this courtesy for the entire calendar year by setting our schedule now. Once approved, the schedule will be posted in the DC Register and on our website at sboe.dc.gov. Is there a motion to approve the proposed 2025 schedule of meetings?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the calendar? All right, seeing no discussion, the motion is on the adoption of the 2025 State Board meeting calendar. Director Butler will call the roll. That's what it says.
Representative Barnes,
Yes.
Representative Mayer,
Yes.
Representative Best,
Yes.
Representative Chang,
Yes.
Representative Goulet,
Yes.
Representative Henderson,
Aye.
Representative O'Leary,
Aye.
Representative Reed,
Aye.
Representative Williams,
Yes.
Vice President Patterson,
Yes.
President Thompson.
Yes.
The District of Columbia State Board of Education notice of meeting schedule for the calendar year of 2025 is approved unanimously.
Thank you. Based on our amended agenda, striking SR 24-3, and we already voted on CR 24-7, we now.
Are we done with the screen job?
It's okay. It's okay. We can leave it, no matter what it's doing. We can leave it. We are now moving on to vote on, SR 24-22, Brandon Best to the Math Task Force. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is that motion has been made by Vice President Patterson? Is there a second?
Second.
I think I heard Representative Chang,
you can take it.
and a third from Representative Goulet. So the motion has been properly moved and seconded by Representative Chang. Director Butler will read the resolution into the record.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I, at this time, I was trying to move a motion to second it, so I could then also move a motion to waive the reading of it, so I do so at this time. No offense to my colleague to my right.
I accept. We have to vote on waiving it, don't we? All right. All in favor of waiving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, Representative Best is not offended. Motion carries. So now we are, instead of Director Butler reading that into the record, is there any discussion on the resolution itself?
Right here. Hi. Rep. Best, would you love to tell the public, you know, a little bit about what motivates you to be on this? I think it'll just be good to hear.
I used to be a math teacher. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I used to be a middle school math teacher, and so it's definitely important to me.
Works for me.
All right. Thank you, Representative Best, for your service. We'll look forward to your updates during the working session. Seeing no further discussion, the motion is to adopt SR 24-22. Director Butler, I'm coming back to you to call the roll.
Representative Barnes,
Yes.
Representative Mayer,
Yes.
Representative Best,
Yes.
Representative Chang,
Yes.
Representative Goulet,
Yes.
Representative Henderson,
Yes.
Representative O'Leary,
Yes.
Representative Reed,
Aye.
Representative Williams,
Yes.
Vice President Patterson,
Yes.
President Thompson.
Yes. All
State
right.
Board of Education resolution appointing Brandon Best to the DC Math Task Force, SR 24-22, is approved unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Representative Best, and congratulations. We are now moving on to vote on State Resolution SR 24-24, recommending actions to improve mathematics performance in the District of Columbia. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I believe that was Representative Henderson. Is there a second?
Second.
And second, who was the second? All right, Representative Williams. Oh, Barnes, thank you. I was like, that's a new voice. I like it. Yes, I like it. The motion has been properly moved by Representative Henderson and seconded by Representative Barnes. Director Butler, are we reading the resolution? I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
In light of our technical difficulties, so we can get out of here, I'd like to move at this time a motion to waive the reading of the resolution without objection.
All right. I don't have an objection, but we will take a vote. All in favor of waiving the reading, and I'm just going to ask that we let the tech be for the moment because we're almost finished. So all in favor of waiving the reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Is there a Student Advisory Committee statement on this to start discussion?
Yes.
All right. We'd love to hear it.
Oh. Okay. On SR 2424, recommended action to improve mathematics performance in the District of Columbia, the Student Advisory Committee voted in support of the resolution. We believe that the resolution addresses several critical areas for improvement in mathematics education in the District of Columbia, and we are encouraged by the proposed actions. However, we wish to highlight key areas for improvement and feedback to ensure these measures lead to meaningful change. Firstly, the SAC emphasized the importance of early interventions, advocating for acceleration opportunities in elementary mathematics through enrichment programs and mentorship initiatives. They believe that fostering a supportive learning environment through peer interactions can significantly enhance students' mathematical development. Regarding the Dream Center, the SAC called for more clarity on its role and effectiveness. They urged the board to establish clear goals and funding to ensure that the center equitably supports students across the district, emphasizing the need for a framework to measure its impact. The committee also raised concerns about the accuracy of assessments, specifically the DC CAPE. They recommended implementing more reliable evaluation methods and tracking student growth over time, especially for those who are below grade level. This feedback reflects a desire for a more accurate representation of student abilities and effective identification of successful teaching strategies. Professional development for educators was highly as a cornerstone of effective instruction, with the SAC advocating for mandatory training that focuses on technology integration and strategies to build student confidence. To address in-home support, the SAC suggested providing resources beyond the classroom, such as tutoring and digital tools, to empower families and ensure that all students receive the necessary support for academic achievement. They also emphasized the need for parental notifications regarding struggling students to include targeted interventions and acceleration strategies. Finally, the SAC reaffirmed the commitment to equity in educational resources, stressing that all materials should be of the highest quality and free of charge. They underscored the importance of ensuring that every student has access to Algebra 1 in middle school, supported by robust systems to facilitate successful learning outcomes. In conclusion, while the SAC firmly believes the recommendation in SR 2424, they urge the board to consider their feedback to effectively and equitably implement the resolution, ensuring that all students in the District of Columbia can thrive in their mathematical education.
Thank you, Representative Barnes. Is there further discussion? That was very thorough. Representative Henderson.
Yeah, if you'll indulge me just a minute, I want to thank the College Career and Life Readiness Committee for their patience in working through this resolution, and to Kathleen Coughlin for multiple rounds of revisions. I want to thank the June panel, David Barnes, Josh Boots, Kayla Green, Dana Grosser-Clarkson, and Tiffany Williams. We also had additional conversations with Alphonse Prince and Jennifer Burkett that have informed the resolution. And as you just heard, we had a robust conversation with the Student Advisory Committee that did result in some important substantive revisions. And so I thank them for that and hope that we can pass this. I do hope that this will give Representative Best something to take to the task force, as I believe that we have already identified a lot of effective, actionable recommendations at the state education agency level, LEA, through the budget, as well as classroom and even family actionable recommendations that you can take to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. I'm seeing no further discussion. The motion is to adopt SR 24-4, and I'm looking back at Director Butler for the roll call.
Representative Barnes.
Yes.
Representative Mayer.
Yes.
Representative Best.
Yes.
Representative Chang.
Yes.
Representative Goulet.
Yes.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative O'Leary.
Yes.
Representative Reed.
Aye.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Representative Patterson.
Yes.
Representative Thompson.
Yes.
SR 24-24, recommending actions to improve mathematics performance in the District of Columbia, passed unanimously.
Thank you, members, for your votes and all the work that went into all of the resolutions that we passed this evening. Members, that concludes our votes. Are there any announcements or comments before we adjourn? Announcements? I have one. All right, it's time to go, you guys. So I'm going to move more quickly. So I have one. We are hosting the Ward 7 Trunk or Treat again on Halloween. It will be from 6 to 8 p.m. That is lot 3 of the RFK parking lots. That is the one closest to the Armory. All are welcome. It is free. It is a good time. If you would like to decorate your trunk and come see me, that's awesome. Bring candy. It's going to be a good time. And again, if you want to get on Kimba and I's matching costumes, just let me know ahead of time. If there are no other announcements, I want to thank the members, the viewing public for their time and engagement tonight. We will return to our Wednesday meetings next month, so we are back on the regular schedule. The State Board will next convene at our working session on November 6th and our public meeting on November 20th. With no further business before the State Board, I will now welcome a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, what? Oh, so this is not a motion to adjourn. Come on with the announcement.
Please, if you have not filled out your voting for the special meeting, please do so. We're still missing a couple of members.
All right. Now, that motion to adjourn, though. All right.
Second.
All right. Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The ayes have it, and this public meeting of the D.C. State Board of Education is adjourned at 8:08 p.m. Thank you, everyone.